Hey, good morning. My name's Pete. I've got a 2008 Crown Victoria P71 Interceptor, and I'm having a problem getting it out of park after it sits for a while and I try to get back in it. And I believe it'll be the shift lock solenoid behind the steering wheel that's keeping it from going into, or from coming out of park. So the first thing we've got to do is we've got to move the airbag. I've already pulled all the covers off from underneath and above the steering column. That's fairly simple, pretty straightforward. There's the parts under the dash, and then a metal brace that goes under there. I probably didn't have to move that out of the way, but I did anyway, just to make it a little bit simpler. It only had, I think, 5 8mm bolts in it, and it's pretty straightforward. That green plug down there is the shift lock solenoid, and I went ahead and unplugged that and the other connector that's hooked underneath there. And you can see right here is the shift lock solenoid, and this green connector came out of the end of it right here. All right, the next thing we've got to do is remove the airbag so that we can get the steering wheel off. And on these Crown Victorias, at least this 2008 model, on the back side of the steering wheel, you'll see in this cover 2 holes on this side and an identical 2 holes on the other side. Now, what I do to remove those is I'll take my small flat blade screwdriver and I'll keep the blade crossways, because there's a metal spring in there that looks something like this screwdriver that you have to press on to release the latches inside the airbag, and there's 4 of them, one on the top and one on the bottom on each side. And you'll feel around in there for the metal spring. It doesn't take a whole lot of pressure to push it in, and then it'll the airbag will unlatch inside once you press on that spring. All right, I'll try to get you a shot here where I can actually not block the camera and press on the spring so you can see how the airbag will unlatch when I do press on it. And stick it in there somewhat at an angle. You'll feel around and you'll kind of feel the metal spring. And then when you push on it, you can see that the airbag on this top right hand corner released. And then I'll do the same thing on the bottom. And there, the right side is unlatched. Now, it's exactly the same on the other side. You might want to stick something in here to keep this side down, or keep your fingers under it. It does have a little bit of spring tension to where it'll come out once you do release the springs, but you'll want to keep it out on the one side while you do the other side, but it's exactly the same. All right, now that we've got all 4 of those loose, and the battery is disconnected, so that there's no chance, hopefully, that the airbag will deploy. Take it out, lay it down, and there'll be a black and a gray plug in the back of the airbag, and also a ground plug on the bottom of it. Now, once we've got all of that disconnected, inside the steering wheel, you've got one connector here that you can take loose that goes to the clock spring. This ground is fine the way that it is, because it will come out with the steering wheel. We've got the nut in the center that holds the steering wheel on. We'll loosen that a little bit. Now, if you've got a steering wheel puller for Fords like this, then you shouldn't have any problem. Mine was on there pretty tight. I've already had it off, and what I had to do was I took a drill straight across. I've got a 2 direction and a 3 direction puller, and so what I did was straight across from the nut I drilled an H size drill bit hole for a 5/16 18 tap, which I already had bolts for that. And then I took my puller and I put it on here to where I could get the steering wheel off, and as soon as I get that done, we'll get started again on what's next. And here's my setup with my puller. One thing that I also made sure to do was that my steering wheel was straight up and down. The wheels are straight, so that when I go to put it back on, I won't have any problem with that. And then just tighten it up, give it a couple of strikes on the end of your puller, like pulling anything else, and it'll break loose, and then you can take the rest of it apart. All right, everything's loose. If you decide to pull your steering wheel the same way that I did, you've got to make sure that you just barely get through this. I think it's probably magnesium or some kind of soft aluminum. Just barely go through, otherwise you're liable to tear something up on the back side of it. Everything should be loose now. The steering wheel should come straight off. And you can see where I drilled the holes in the back of the steering wheel. The little piece of plastic right there, no big deal. Didn't bother the springs that hold the airbag on or anything. All right, next thing is to take the clock spring off. You can see here that it's got alignment marks, and to the top, the way this clock spring is held on, it's got 3 little spring clips. One here, and one right under here. And you can get in there with a little screwdriver or your fingers, get those 3 loose, and then the clock spring will pull straight off. All right, I've got those 3 plastic clips unhooked for the clock spring. It pulls straight off. Now we can gain access to all the bracketry that holds the solenoid in place. All right, first thing we've got to take off is this bracket right here, and there is a spring underneath this bracket. It has a little bit of spring pressure on it. It's not too horrible. Be careful taking this screw off. Mine was very tight when I first tried to take it off. I was afraid that my Torx bit might strip it out, but it finally did break loose. Kind of tough to do with one hand. All right, and here's that little spring with the spring pressure behind it. It's fairly well captured in there. It's not like it's going to go flying anywhere. And here's our shift lock solenoid. Easy to get to now. The first thing that we'll do is we'll pull this part out right here. This will just slide straight out. Because that wire is connected to the solenoid. And then it's got a little catch right here, and it'll pull straight out the bottom. And there's the shift interlock solenoid. This is the little emergency latch that you get to underneath your steering column. If you remove this rubber plug, you have access to this little detent, and when you push on that detent, you can see that the solenoid retracts. That's an emergency feature if you need to get it out of park. Now, the problem with mine is it's getting a little sticky. Especially after it sits for a while, it'll hang up, and then I can't get it out of park unless I kind of bang on the shifter for a little bit, and it'll finally loosen up and pull down, and then I can get it out of there. This part is roughly $70, sometimes with, sometimes without shipping. And what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to clean it. I've got some electric contact cleaner. I'm going to spray that on there, try to get the gunk off of it to where it's not sticking anymore. It's just a regular electric solenoid, but it's not very high powered. So maybe with that electric contact cleaner, I'll be able to get it to where I don't have to spend that $70 to get a new solenoid. We'll see how that works. All right, we've got our CRC electromotive electric parts cleaner. All right, when I first started, you could feel it at the very upward position that it was kind of sticky. Right now, it has no stickiness to it at all. So like I said, hopefully that'll take care of it. Now, if the solenoid is getting too weak, of course, it may not help. But after I beat on the shifter for a while, when it was locked, it did come loose. So that makes me think that the solenoid probably is still okay. Just that it was built up with a little bit of crud over the years since 2008 and getting a little bit sticky. All right, now we're going to put it back together and see if it's going to work for us or not. Kind of the reverse order, putting it back together. Stick it in there, put this little sensor back, push it all the way in. The detent spring. Push the plate flat down so the spring doesn't get hung behind the plate, and put the screw in. Go ahead and connect this back up. Clock spring, the alignment marks are aligned towards the top, and then just push it straight on, and these three little plastic tabs will connect. That's in there. I can go ahead and connect this connector back up. Get my steering wheel, feed the airbag wire through the center. Put it on. Steering wheel bolt back in. connect the clock spring connector. All right, that's as far as we need to go to see if we did it any good or not. No problem, first time.
As I finish cleaning this gun.
So hopefully, for mine at least, a little bit of electric contact cleaner did the trick. And just continue reassembling it just like you took it apart.